Welcome, width players. You've reached this junction in the tape either by identifying yourself as a width player through the body identification test or going through the entire testing program and finding that you are a width player. Now what we find width players are usually one of two things. They're either senior players who've lost their flexibility and began to get thick, or they are muscular advantage players who have rounded, well-muscular bodies, very thick chests, short, thick arms, and they have minimal flexibility. If you fit into one of these two categories, you're ready to move on. Jim, why don't you give us a little better description of the width player?
This is Jonathan. He is a professional golfer. Jonathan we're using as our typical width player. We're also classifying him in our body types as a endomorph. Endomorph tends to have big skeletal features and also much body girth. If you can look at Jonathan here, you can see he's big in the chest area, usually has the short legs and the long arms, big in the shoulders, and very powerful. These players are very strong and accurate players. Now if we turn this way here, we can see Jonathan has a very big chest. Now this chest demands that he swing the golf club in the width dimension away from him.
We are now ready to learn the building blocks to the ideal width golf swing. Our first building block is the preparation stage. It has 5 elements. Our second building block is the backswing, which has 2 elements, and our final building block is the downswing, which has 3 elements. We're ready to start the preparation stage. There are 5 elements to the preparation stage. There is the grip, there is the ball location or position, there is the posture, the stance, and the alignment. Let's start with the grip. Jonathan, why don't you come on over here and help me out. We're going to start with the way we hold the golf club. Now, the width player, because of his thick chest, lack of flexibility, is going to need to have a different grip. He's going to need to grab the club up in front of him at a 90-degree angle. Why don't you go ahead and do that, Jonathan? As he grabs the club up in front of him at a 90-degree angle, what happens is it does a couple things. Number one, it lengthens the left thumb. That's important because that will allow him to cock the club up much quicker in the backswing, setting it into a steeper position and getting his height dimension from his wrist set instead of trying to do it with his arm swing. The second thing it does is, as my left thumb gets longer, what you notice is his left hand begins to get into a stronger position. What this is going to do is going to facilitate the ball position necessary for him to hit the golf ball. But when we get the club in this position, and the left hand in this position, it puts him in a preset position, which allows him to create a little more bend forward at the hip sockets to create a better posture for him, allowing him more arm swing. Because with a thicker chest, he is going to need more arm swing, and by bending over more, it's going to help him do that. So, grab the club up in front of him at a 90-degree angle. He will then bring the right hand up to meet it. The right hand will clap up behind the handle with the thumb of the left hand fitting between the 2 pads of the right. When we're in correct position, the knuckles will line up, putting us in position so the hands will work together as a unit. Now it's very important that we get the hands on this club correctly. If the width player had a short thumb, this would be detrimental. This is a tragic position for the width player because a short thumb sets the club lately. So what he needs to do is set the club early, and so he needs to always grab the club up in front of him at a 90-degree angle, clapping the right hand up behind it. That's our basic grip for the width player. Thank you, Jonathan. So let's review this. It's very important you width players always take your grip in front of you at a 90-degree angle. What this does, it extends our left hand as far down the shaft as possible. When that left thumb is extended, it allows the club to set early in the backswing, helping us to gain our height dimension with wrist set. The second thing it does is it puts our left hand in a strong position. This is important for us because it allows us to play the ball farther back in our stance so we can catch the ball more on the inside arc. The right hand will simply clap up behind the handle, lining the knuckles up. Once you have this grip, you're on your way to learn the ball position.
Whatever else golf is, it's a game of geometry. The relationships of lines to angles, the ball, your club head, the target, your body. These are important fundamentals. If you get the ball position correct, you're well on your way to making a good golf swing. If you take the iron byron, which is a ball hitting machine used to test clubs, and you put the perfect ball position in place, the iron byron will hit perfect golf shots all day. If you move it several inches forward toward the target, it'll hit tops all day. If you move it too far back, it hits low hooks. So you can see the importance of correct ball position. To demonstrate that, I'm going to ask Jonathan, our muscular advantage model, to come on in and set up. Jonathan has now a short iron, and when the ball is on the ground with the medium to short irons, the muscular advantage player plays him off of the middle of the face. We say it's off the nose is a good guideline. As he progresses to the long irons and the fairway woods, the ball moves about a ball width so that it's then positioned off the left cheek. When the ball's on a tee with a driver and the fairway woods, again, there's another incremental increase of about a ball width, and that goes off of his logo. The reason for these positionings, again, it's a game of geometry. Because the muscular advantage player plays from a slightly closed stance and has a stronger grip, the lowest point of his arc will occur earlier than it will with the other swings in the model. And that's the reason why he begins his progression from short to medium, through long irons, and then to the teed positions. He moves the ball forward so that he'll catch it solidly at the bottom of his arc.
What I want to talk to you about is the stance for the width player. The stance is where the width player begins to alter from the norm. It's very important that the stance for the width player does a couple of things. Number one, it must create a position to give him ability to create more turn. The second thing it must do, it must shorten his right leg so that he can work more from underneath. The third thing it must do is it must permit him to bend over more. So it must create a solid foundation so that he can bend over more and still maintain balance. And the final thing it will do is allow him to take his over-the-top swing to a down-the-line swing. And we've got the ideal stance for that. Jonathan, why don't you come on over here and give me a hand. Okay, now Jonathan is of the muscular advantage variety. Now what he's going to do is show you the proper stance, okay? Go ahead and set up square. Okay, now this would be a normal position for a normal player. What Jonathan's going to do is drop his right foot back. That is closing his stance. What this is going to do is buy him more turn going back. Example, put your foot back to square, turn to the top of your backswing and stop, okay? From a square position, his shoulder gets to here. Now drop your right foot back. Now turn back. He's bought himself an extra 15 degrees of turn, which is necessary for the width player because this is going to allow the club to seek the depth dimension on the downswing. Okay? Second thing it's done is it's shortened his right leg, allowing him to work more from underneath. And it's going to allow him to come down the line to hit the golf ball. Example. Come on over here, Jonathan. I'll set up to it. Square. Now this would represent the target line. Take it back to the top. From a square position, when he works over the top, you can see the club is coming from outside the line. Drop your right foot back, Jonathan. Take it back to the top. Now come down. As you can see now, even though it's the same move, the club has moved back on plane and come from the inside down the line. So it's important by dropping this right foot back, it buys him the depth dimension. Not only does it buy him more turn in the backswing, but it buys him the depth dimension on the downswing. Now, how do you find your ideal stance? Okay, well, put your feet normal. This is a square position. Now, go ahead and turn through the impact. What you'll see as he turns through the impact, there's a gap between the legs. Simply slide your right foot back till the knees come together. Now put your right foot down. Okay, now come on back to address. Take it back to the top and turn through. What it does is it allows his knees to work together. Okay, let's do it facing into swinging into the camera. Square position. Okay, turn through. Notice the gap between the legs. Okay, slide the right foot back. Notice how the knees come together. Now put the foot down. Come back to address. Okay, now you can see that would be his ideal stance. Now turn back to the top. Good. That's going to give him the position and through to finish. Excellent. Notice how the knees come together. That's a perfect position, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Paul is of the senior variety. Paul is going to help me find out the second part of the stance. Now, the flaring of the feet is vital for the width player because the flaring of the feet is going to keep him from coming over the top. It's going to help him to maintain that right leg flex in the backswing, and the flaring of the feet is going to help him create the correct amount of turn on the through swing. Okay, now set up to it, Paul. If his right foot is in a square position, go ahead and turn back to the top. What you notice is immediately the leg locks. When this leg locks, it forces the weight to stay on the inside of the right foot and causes his body to move towards the target. This is a tragic position for the width player. Okay? So we need to flare the right foot out. Now, the flaring of the right foot out, what this is going to do for the width player is going to allow the right leg to maintain its flex so he can sit into the right leg. Now, why is that important? Well, the axes for the width player are the two hips, the right hip and the left hip. In order for me to turn the right hip over the right heel, this foot must be flared out so that I can maintain this leg flex, because the knees will always go in the direction of the toes. Example, Paul, go ahead and flare your feet way out. Other foot. Okay, now just simply squat down. And what you notice is his knees go out in the direction of the toes. Now exaggerate it and pigeon toe your feet in. More. Okay, now bend down. And what you notice is his knees go in. So the knees will seek the direction of the toes. By flaring this right foot out, it allows the right knee to turn out in the backswing and maintain that flex position, allowing the right hip to get over the right heel. With the right foot flared out, what else it does is it allows the right heel to stay to the inside in the downswing, preventing him to getting up and over the top. Because in a square position, the right heel will have a tendency to work to the outside and get off the ground, getting the right hip very high and over the top. With the right foot down and the right foot flared out, it keeps the right heel to the inside, it keeps the foot down longer, allowing the width player to stay more underneath. Because it is tragic for the right hip to get high for the width player. It is tragic for the right foot to work to the outside for the width player. So it's very important we get this right foot flared out. Now, I'm going to show you how to find your ideal right foot position. Okay, Paul? We're not going to need the golf club. What I want you to do is start from a square position. Okay? Okay, set your hands down. Now all I'd like you to do is turn to the top of your backswing. Okay? Notice how it's locking up. Okay, let's start again. Let's drop the right foot back a little bit more, and let's flare it a little more. Okay, good. Turn back to the top. Okay, now you notice he's able to maintain his flex. When you find a position that allows you to turn the right hip over the right heel and still maintain the right leg flex, that is the position we want to put the right foot in. Now, the left foot position. The left foot is of equal importance because the left foot is going to determine when the acceleration occurs in the golf swing. What we have to understand is what we want to create is transference of energy. Transference of energy is a product of the acceleration happening when the ball strikes the golf club. Now, the way it needs to happen is the same way it works when we drive a car. When I step on the accelerator of the car goes faster, but there is no transference of energy. But as soon as I slam on the brake, what happens, it throws my head into the windshield. We now have transference of energy. So we need to find a left foot position that allows the left leg to lock up when the hips are roughly 45 degrees and at impact. Okay, come on over here, Paul. Okay, set up to it. So we're looking for about 45 degrees of hip turn coming through. Okay? Go ahead and turn through it. Turn through it. Okay, now, that locked up about right here, and the hips didn't quite reach 45. So let's flare the left foot out a little more. Okay, turn back and through to impact. You notice that the left leg locks up at impact, and the shaft here matches the one on the ground, roughly 45 degrees. So his hips reach the impact position at the same time his left leg straightens, so all the acceleration now happens at the bottom of the arc, right prior to impact or at impact. And that is what we're looking for, because we want the acceleration to happen into the back of the golf ball, not back here or not over here. So we've now found a way to find our ideal foot position. Thank you very much, Paul. So the width player, the things that he needs to do, he needs to close his stance and he needs to flare both feet out. The way he finds out exactly how far he should close his stance is he simply stands in a square position and he turns through. How much gap there is between his knees determines how much his right leg must slide back to get ourselves in position so the knees come together. He then puts the foot down. That gives him his stance. Now, how much he should flare the right foot? What he's going to do is simply keep moving this right foot into position until he can turn the right hip over the right heel and still maintain the flex position. The left foot, he's going to simply turn through until the leg locks up at impact, and that's the amount of flare he's going to find in his left foot. If you do these things, you'll find that you're building the perfect individual stance for yourself, and I guarantee you're going to hit longer, straighter golf shots.
In this segment, I'll make a distinction between aim and alignment, and then apply some particulars to the width player. When we refer to aiming the golf club, what we mean is that the face of the golf club is pointing at the target. We call this a square position. If the face is pointing to the right of the target, we call this open. When the face is pointing to the left of the target, we refer to this as a closed position. In terms of alignment, we refer to the body positioning in relationship to the target line. So that when the body is parallel with the target line, we call this a square position. When the body is pointing to the right of the target line, we call this closed. And when the body is pointing to the left of the target line, we refer to this as being an open position. In terms of the muscular advantage player, he has a somewhat unique setup. Unlike the other two model types, the muscular advantage player has, as Mike has referred to, has a closed position with the feet and the hips. That is, when he takes his address position, the feet and the hips are pointing to the right of the target. However, and this is very important for the correct aim and alignment relationship, the face of the club is looking directly down the target line, as are the shoulders. So the shoulders and the face of the club are square to the target line, while the feet and hips are pointing slightly to the right. What this allows him to do, as we'll see in the full swing segment, is to take the club back along the toe line, and on the downswing, as he swings along his shoulder line, that brings the club face right back to the target line which allows him to hit a square, solid shot to the target.
I'm going to talk to you about posture. Posture is pivotal for the width player. What posture does, it establishes the position that the club will swing on. It establishes the plane. It also establishes how much arm swing we're going to have and at the angle that the shoulders turn on. So it's very, very important that we establish a proper posture position every single time. Let's start with the muscular advantage player. Come on in here, Jonathan. Now, there are some things about the muscular advantage player that requires us to change the posture from the norm. The muscular advantage player has a much thicker chest, plus much bigger arms, plus much less flexibility. So what we have to do is create a position that allows him to have more arm swing. Let's go ahead and face me, Jonathan. Now, in a standard position, if he were in this position, what would happen is, go ahead and swing your left arm across your chest. What happens is the arm does not get very far. But by bending him over more, he creates more room for the arm to swing across his chest. This is very important for the width player. Okay? So what we're going to do is bend him over more. By bending him over more, we create more room for the arms to swing. It also allows him to have that longer thumb, which will force the club to set much earlier and much quicker in the backswing. And because of the closed stance that the muscular advantage or width player plays from, it allows him to bend over more and still maintain balance. So this will be the posture for the muscular advantage player. A good checkpoint is the butt of the club will always point to the navel. Now, thank you very much, Jonathan. Let's bring on the senior player. Paul, come on over here. Now, the senior player will not bend over as much because the chest thickness is not as much. So what we try to do is find the posture that gives him about 45 degrees of arm swing. We're going to do this without the club. We're going to do it from two angles. First facing me, then facing the camera. Okay? Now, standing very erect, there's not much arm swing at all, is there? Okay, go ahead and face the camera and we'll show them that. From erect position, the chest runs into the arm runs into the chest very quickly in the backswing. Okay, now let's turn back. Let's bend over a little bit more. By bending Paul over more, what I have done is created more room and the left arm runs into the chest much later in the backswing. Okay, turn and face him. Excellent. So we get the 45 degrees of arm swing that we want. Because he is not bent over as much, his stance will not be as close. So the senior player will find the posture that allows him about 45 degrees of arm swing. Once he's established that, he will drop his right foot back and get him back into a balanced position. And that will be the posture that he will assume. Thank you very much, Paul. Now, let's review this. The muscular advantage player, what he will do is bend more over. The reason he bends more over is because he has a thicker chest, bigger arms, less flexibility. He's trying to buy as much arm swing as possible. The senior player will only bend over enough to create 45 degrees of arm swing. So what he is going to do is he's going to simply keep swinging his arm across his chest, and as he bends over more until he finally finds the position that gives him 45 degrees of arm swing. It's very important that both the width player muscular advantage and the width player senior both bend forward from the hip sockets so that they create the correct counterbalance. If we do these things, we'll be in better position to hit the golf ball. Now we're ready to hit some shots. We are now ready for the second building block, the backswing. The backswing basically has two elements. There is the initial stage and then the loading zone to the top. Let's go ahead and start with the initial stage of the backswing. Jonathan is the muscular advantage player. Paul is a senior player, both with players, and we're going to help you find out what is your ideal top position for your backswing. Why don't you turn and face me, both of you? Now, what I'd like you both to do is take your right arms to the top of your backswing and stop. Okay? This is what is confused to be the ideal top position. Most of us try to establish our top position with the right arm. Okay? Now, maintaining that right arm position, I'd like you to bring the left arm back and meet it. Okay, now what you notice between these two players is there is a tremendous gap between where the right arm finishes and where the left arm finishes. Most amateurs make the mistake of trying to force the left arm up to meet the right. When that happens, it straightens them up, pulling them out of their posture and throwing them towards the target. What needs to happen instead is the left arm needs to dictate the length of the backswing. Simply bring the right arm back down and let it meet it. And that will be your top position. Okay? Thank you, Paul. Now, Jonathan, you're going to help me find the ideal plane, staying in the same position. Okay? First, we're going to fold the right hand up. We're going to take the right hand and we're going to make a pistol. Okay? Let it in this position. Now fold the right arm straight up from there. You notice that he finishes below his shoulders, so his plane is going to be much flatter. That is the position that I will start the club at the left shoulder and run the shaft through this position here. Okay, now grip the club, Jonathan. Now, if he takes it back properly, his golf club should rest right on this shaft. Go ahead and take it back, Jonathan. Okay, that would be lifted above, and that would be ideal. That's the position we want to do it in. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, that is where the top plane should be. Now, watch what happens. Let go with the left hand and let the left arm fall. Notice how direct a route he's got back to the golf ball. That is very important. So by establishing his ideal swing length and ideal plane, we are ready to start to build his backswing. Let's understand what must occur in the width player's backswing. First thing we need to understand is the width player is a dual action player. His right hip and his left hip represent his axes. So what we have to do is not worry about the movement of the spine because it will occur. That's why you'll see a lot of players on tour look like they've moved off the ball. In reality, all they're doing is turning behind the golf ball. Now, what we're going to establish is how the club is going to be hinged by the width player, and we're also going to establish the turning action, how it occurs. Now, there are basically three types of hinge. There's the vertical hinge, where the club hinges in line with the left wrist. There's the horizontal hinge, which the club hinges back, and there's the diagonal hinge, which it hinges towards the right shoulder. Now, each of these hinges is going to be necessary for a different swing type. It's very important for us to understand that. The arc player has a vertical hinge. This is magic for him, but it's tragic for the muscular advantage or width player, and it's also tragic for the leverage player. The leverage player has a horizontal hinge, which is magic for him, but tragic for the arc and width player. Now the width player, what they want to do is they want to hinge it diagonally towards the right shoulder. That is why we place the grip in a stronger position. So the club will be hinged in the direction of the left thumb. When the left thumb is in this position and we simply hinge up, the club will go towards the right shoulder. Now, let's talk about how the hinge works. The way it works for the width player is the width player pushes down on the handle with the left hand. When they push down on the handle, what the club does is it elevates. So the club gets to the height dimension by pushing down on the handle. They then take the heel pad right here of the right hand and push out. When it does that, you'll notice the right arm gets in line with the body. And when that happens, it sets the club on the plane in line with the right shoulder. So the hinging action is basically pushing down and out, down with the left hand, out with the right hand, setting the club on plane. Now this will occur in the initial stage of the backswing. So from right here to right here, the club will be set. Now let's talk about what the shoulder does. What the shoulder does is the left shoulder will turn behind the golf ball. Basically, it's feeling like you're trying to reach across and grab something. When that happens, it gets you behind the golf ball in position to deliver the club into the depth dimension from the inside. So, let's take a look at what happens in the backswing. The left shoulder is going to be turning behind the ball while the left hand is pushing down and the right hand is pushing out. So let's work on the backswing. Left shoulder turning back, left hand pushing down, right hand pushing out. And that will set the club on the proper plane in position to deliver the golf club. Jonathan, come on over here. Now we've got a drill to help you develop this. This is called the preset drill. Go ahead and face here. What we've taken is a piece of surgical tubing and we've tied it around his chest and we've run this on the handle. Okay? What this is here for is for Jonathan to work on pushing the club down and away. Because what he wants to do is keep this tubing taut. Okay? Set it down. Push it down and away. Good. Stretching it out. Now this is going to help to build the proper backswing. Let's do that again. Down and out. We're also going to utilize a board, a 2x4. What this 2x4 is going to do is going to help us to level out the shoulder turn, because the tilt is a tragic move for the width player. What he wants to do is he wants the shoulder to turn across. By taking the board and placing the club on top of the board, what this does is it flattens the shoulder turn out and allows him to have a leveler turn in the backswing. Okay? Go ahead and turn back. Good. And this puts him in position that we want him to hit the golf ball. Let's work on that backswing. First, measure to the golf ball. Place your club on top of the 2x4 and simply turn the left shoulder down. Good. Do it again. Set up to it. Measure to the ball first. Place the club on top of the 2x4. Making sure that we turn the left shoulder behind the ball, pushing down with the left hand, pushing out with the right hand. Let's go ahead and do it. If you work on this drill, you're going to build the perfect backswing position and you'll be ready to move into the downswing.
In this segment, we're going to talk about the position at the top and the downswing. In order to demonstrate the position at the top, we're going to use Jonathan again, and he has a teaching aid which helps us demonstrate the correct position. Jonathan, if you take your stance this way. As Mike said, Jonathan makes the correct moves on the backswing, setting the club correctly, and as he goes to the top, see this position has the certain characteristics. Number one, it's very important for the elbows to be level with one another. What you don't want to see is this position. You'd have too much shoulder tilt and the club would be too vertical, nor would you want to see this position. The club would be what we call laid off. So in the correct position, his elbows are level. The second thing that you can see is that the club is set in a perfect position, ready to go on to be slotted during the downswing. The third characteristic of the correct backswing is that this right elbow is no more than 45 degrees bent. What you do not want to do is allow the collapse of the right elbow, because that loses the club behind you. Remember, the muscular advantage player plays with his hands in the middle of his chest at the backswing so he can get the club back in front of him at impact. Thanks. Now, once these positions are attained, it becomes relatively easy to slot the club if you do two things. The first thing you must do is to allow the right elbow to tuck back into the body in this fashion, and what that does is it places the club on the plane during the downswing. The second thing you do, and these are simultaneous, you do them together. The second thing you do is once the club is dropped in this fashion, at the same time, the weight is transferred to the left hip. The left hip is your rotational axis on the downswing. What happens is the club is on plane, the load has been delivered into the left hip, and now the player is ready to turn back onto the target line and make solid contact. To demonstrate this, we're going to ask Jonathan to hit a golf ball. And I'm going to give him a little feeling. If you set up, Jonathan, I'm going to give him a little feeling for this position. Get to the top of the swing. And what you'll notice is that on the way down, as he tilts in this way, the club comes right back onto the plane. As he comes through impact, he's already switched into his left hip. His upper spine is going to move slightly this way and raise. Many good players who are muscular advantage and width players do this. Fuzzy Zeller is one of them. It looks like they're coming up and out of the shot, but in actuality, they're not. Their spine and their body is just responding to the pulls and pushes of physics. From here, he simply turns through, releasing the club down the line to the target. Let's see you hit one of those for us. Well, that was about as pure as it gets. Thanks, Jonathan. If you get to the top of your backswing correctly, and you slot the club on the downswing, you almost have to work to make a mistake at impact.
Everybody who plays this game wants to hit the ball farther. Each one of us has a distance potential, but we don't hit the ball our potential because we have power leaks in our swing. Well, to understand the power leaks, we need to understand how the width player generates his force. Well, the width player generates his force by, number one, the trunk winding up, number two, the hinging and keeping the club extended away from him, and number three, using his muscular advantage to hit the shot. Now, let's understand where those power leaks occur. The first power leak in the width player occurs with the grip. He tends to get too short a thumb or too weak a grip. Too short a thumb doesn't allow him to set the club early, and too weak a grip doesn't allow him to use strong lower body action to hit the shot. So we need to make sure that he always grabs the club up in front of him at a 90-degree angle, getting the heel pad on top and the thumb as long as we can down the shaft. The right hand needs to be opposed in this position so they face each other. Now what the right hand position does is set up the proper hinging and pushing action. If the right hand gets too much under, the right arm folds too early, so they lose their stretch and width. And it's very important for the width player to maintain his width. So the right hand needs to be in this position so it's lined up and the two hands opposed as such. And that's why we grip the golf club. Now, let's talk about the stance. The right foot needs to be dropped back. By dropping the right foot back, it buys him more turn in the backswing, allowing him to create greater coil and a greater distance and greater force. We also need to make sure that the right foot is flared out, because if the right foot is not flared out, they don't get into the right side and we can't generate the force proper. If the right foot is square, the right leg locks up, the weight stays left, and we end up coming out and over the top. But with the right foot flared out, not only do we turn into the right side, but it keeps the right foot on the ground so we can generate force from the ground up and allows the weight to move from underneath. So we need to make sure that the stance is both closed and the right foot flared. The left foot must also be flared because it allows us to turn all the way through to generate that rotational action, generating the force necessary to hit the ball great distance. Now, let's talk about the backswing. What must happen in the backswing is the left hand must push down and the right hand must push the club out. When that does that, it keeps the club in a wide position. If the right arm were to collapse and get closer to us, what happens is we lose all the stretch and coil we create, and the arms end up moving away from us in the downswing. What we want to do is keep the club wide, so in the downswing we can contract the arms back into the body and expand when we hit the golf shot. What else needs to happen is this left shoulder needs to turn behind the golf ball. If the left shoulder were to tilt, the body would collapse, creating a power leak. Another power leak to watch is the left knee. If the left knee were to collapse, the weight never moves to the right side, and the width player loses all his width and all his power. So the knees need to be stable in the direction of the toes. We need to create a coil from ankle to knee to hip, so that we can create the final coil of turning the left shoulder behind the golf ball. Once in this position, now the width player is in position to deliver the club with force into the back of the golf ball by tucking the right elbow and rotating the hips through. So the key to force for the width player lies in the setup. We need to make sure and get the perfect grip every single time. Number one, grabbing the club up in front of us at a 90-degree angle, getting the long left thumb. Number two, clapping the right hand up so the two hands oppose. Number three, dropping the right foot back and flaring the right foot out and flaring the left foot out. Once we're in this position, we're ready to make the takeaway. We want to keep the knees stabilized and the hips stabilized, turning the left shoulder behind the golf ball, keeping the arms, pushing the club away, allowing the right elbow to tuck in and allowing the body to deliver the force with a rotation into the back of the golf ball. You'll hit the ball longer and straighter if you get set up perfectly every single time and maintain that width throughout the golf swing. Now let's review the width golf swing. Let's start with building block number one, the preparation stage. The first element is the grip, and the way the width player grabs the club is he always grabs the club up in front of them at a 90-degree angle. So the left arm is extended and the club is a 90-degree angle. What this does is puts the left thumb in a long position and to the right of the center. The right hand simply claps up behind the handle from this position. The ball location or position. We will position the golf ball opposite our nose in the center of our body with the 5-iron through the wedges. As we move up to the 4-irons through the fairway woods, we will move up to the left side of the face. And the driver or any teed up fairway wood will be opposite the logo on the shirt. The stance. What we do with the stance is we close the stance, and the way we determine that is we simply stand in a position and we turn through the impact. How much space is between the knees determines how much the right leg slides back. That determines how much the right foot is going to be drawn off the target line or in a closed position. We then flare the right foot out and the left foot out, allowing us maximum turn in the backswing, maintaining the right leg flex and allowing us to deliver the club from the inside. We also know once we've got our stance, we create our posture. Now the posture is going to be created by bending over more from the hip sockets, creating enough arm swing for the width player who has a thicker chest, so he will be bent over more. The alignments, the club face will be aimed at the target and the shoulders will be parallel to the target line. Now let's start the second building block, the backswing. The backswing occurs with two actions. Number one, the left hand pushing down on the handle as the right hand pushes out and the left shoulder turning behind the golf ball. Now the width player has two axes, his right hip and his left hip. So he doesn't have to worry about a stationary spine position. So what happens is the left shoulder turns behind the ball as we pivot back on the right hip, and the left hand pushes down and out on the club, loading the golf club. Once the club is in this position, we are ready for the third building block. In the downswing, what we do is we simply deliver the right elbow into the side, which drops the club in position into the depth dimension. From here, once we are ready, we are in the delivery zone. All that happens is the body simply rotates through and we hit the golf ball with full force of the body. When the width player finishes, he will finish in an upright eye position and the club will be swung around him. If you work on these fundamentals and drill every day on the drills, I guarantee you're going to play the best golf of your life and enjoy this game a lot more.
For more information on the laws of golf, call 1-800-GOLF-TYPE, GOLF-TYPE.